I guess the fallout ain't so bad. I guess potatoes aren't the superpowered weapons that Rotato made them out to be. I mean, I guess I'm lucky considering what else would I do with my time if I couldn't make videos. Fighting for survival seems pretty overrated. I can't go heavy into something with this headache that it's caused. I guess I should look for something light and breezy on Steam to play through for this video. How about this Animal Well? Wasn't that the game published by that YouTuber, Donkey? Well, it sure looks tiny and cute, which is exactly what I needed, all things considered. Yep, that's 40 megabytes. Let's give it a go, and see what it's all about. What I was expecting to be an easygoing game going in ended up being one of the most enriching times I've had this year. This game really is something special. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I dig a good Metroidvania. Hollow Knight, Bloodstained, etc, etc. But Animal Well takes that formula and puts a fresh new spin on it by subtracting the combat you expect from the genre and adding a multitude of puzzles that make it wholly unique. I think I have a Game of the Year contender on my hands. Now that's some pretty high praise right off the bat, but this game is by no means perfect. Stupid f***ing woof. It has a few problems in terms of its world design that causes the areas to be confusing to the point where I had no clue where to go, which is one of the things that grinds my gears the most in these kinds of games. There were plenty of times where I just sat there looking at the map for minutes on end. The thing you do in those areas are well worth the effort of finding them, however, so let's get into what makes Animal Well so special. But first, the development. Let's dive into Animal Well together. How did this game come to be, other than being published by Big Mode? It was made by a guy by the name of Billy Basso. Before Animal Well, he had worked at other studios, including NetherRealms and Phosphor Games, for 10 years. I don't know how you go from Mortal Kombat to this, but no shame in trying something new, I suppose. It took 7, I can only assume felt, long years for Animal Well to be finally complete, and released on today, at the time I'm writing this, May 9th. Yeah, I enjoyed it so much that I finished it in one 7-hour sitting, and I'm currently writing the review. Normally I'll sit on a game for a day before writing because I like to think about the overall experience before putting anything in words. That's when you know that you are truly enjoying something. 1, when you lose track of time while playing, and 2, how you just want to continue to immerse yourself in that world, whether it's by writing about it or playing more of it. Which, jumping the gun a bit, I did not 100% complete everything there is, but I definitely want to. It takes some serious dedication to stick with a project for that long. That shows that Basso has passion for what he wanted to create. That should be inspiring for any indie developer out there. It feels like they're wasting their time sticking with one. So the game was a long time coming. Was it worth the 7-year wait? I'd say yes. Enough about the development. How about the game? Can I gush a bit about how it looks for a second? I can? Thanks. This game is all sorts of pretty. There are plenty of areas where machines and animals come together. It implies that there was once some human involvement before nature started taking over. Unless you want me to believe that these animals just made these contraptions like giant hamster wheels and the such. Everything has this sort of neon lighting that makes the graphics pop. I said it in the beginning, but how is this game just 40 megabytes? With all these effects and how big the game ends up being, it really puts the AAA games to shame with their data compression. I guess you can chalk it up to how simple the graphics are. This might be the simplest looking game I've ever played, but there definitely is a charm in the simple. It has its own distinct identity that makes it stand out compared to games with comparable graphics like VVVVV. I think that's the right amount of V's. It's clearly a marvel on the technical side with how much it's able to cram into the size of a spec, but what about the story? It's probably the aspect that's most similar to a Metroidvania in how it's presented, particularly a game like Hollow Knight. Honestly, I'd say it's even more cryptic than that game. It's very much a show, don't tell sort of story. I don't think there's a single line of dialogue by anybody. Hell, other than your player, there's nobody else to interact with for story purposes. It's all on the player to make something out of what happens in this game. You're this brown thing that is born out of this flower, and it's your job to do something. Like I said before, there is zero direction you are given from the jump. It's on you and your explorative spirit to discover the secrets of this wet, animal-filled world. And there are plenty of strange sights for you to see as you venture on. With animals ranging from massive to small, the name sure doesn't lie. There are indeed many animals throughout, although you don't go through a well to get here, so I don't know about that part. What your actual goal here is to collect 4 flames that are being guarded by 4 large animals. See what I tell you, it's got animals. A seahorse, an ostrich, a chameleon, and the spirit of a wolf. I f***ing hate this Once you acquire all these flames, you'll put them in the pedestals that open up the way to the final area. Then you run into and subsequently defeat the being called the Manticore, which is actually an animal of Persian descent that has the body of a lion and the tail of a scorpion. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't have anything to do with the game's Manticore's origin. It has a sort of technological-based look to it. It's clearly different from all the other animal designs in the game. Not to mention, as you collect flames, more of these purple blocks with faces appear, making previous areas more dangerous. They are the same color, so I can only assume that these were caused by this thing slowly being able to escape as you get closer to opening the way. What is this thing? Why was it locked up? Where did it come from? At the end, the achievement for completing the game says that we released it, not defeated it. Does that mean that we just let it out into the world and it can wreak havoc once more? It's those sorts of questions that start to pile up as you play the game, and it's those questions that make the story as intriguing as it is, as well as all the surreal architecture you'll see. There was definitely some sort of human presence here at one time, based on all the technology you run into. Like all the large hamster wheels you run into, there's clearly something underneath that needs to be uncovered. But this game is deep enough as it is. Do you get it? It's about how this game takes place underground. I assure you it's funny. The story is also part of what makes this game special. There's also the gameplay that puts a unique spin on the Metroidvania structure, its focus on puzzles. To talk about them, we gotta discuss the vessel at which you experience them. One thing that jumped out to me immediately was just how small your character is. It's itty bitty, teeny tiny, and I thought for sure that was going to make the platforming in this game unbearable, but it was not, by any means. It feels very good to control this little guy. It has just the right amount of smoothness and speed to its movements that I, 99% of the time, felt in control of my actions. Although there were a few exceptions, however. This is so annoying. It's a good thing that this is the case, because the game asks you to do a lot of platforming. It plays a large part in the puzzles as well. You know how in regular Metroidvanias, the way you progress through the world is usually gated by required movement upgrades, like a double jump or a dash. Animal World does the same thing, but instead of movement, you will use one of the many tools that you have procured throughout your adventure. In essence, they accomplish the same thing, but it tickles a different part of your brain. While an intense platforming section might make you feel like a god for nailing precise jumps, Animal Well will get the same reaction in the critical thinking part of your brain. The cool part is that not only can you have your cake, but you can also eat it too, as most of these tools have more than one use, like the disc that can be used to throw through tight passageways and can bounce off walls. But did you also know that you can ride on top of it for some speedy horizontal movement? This is one of those annoying moments that's caused by the size of your character. You have to be so precise to land on top of this thing. One trick I figured out was that if you throw it at the top of your jump, you can actually land on it without having to throw it off a wall. I don't know if this was intentional, but if it wasn't, don't patch it out, please. There's the bubble one that lets you blow a bubble that you can jump off of to reach higher areas, the top that can destroy certain floors, as well as the stalactites all over the place. So if you're having trouble with that, there you go. The remote that lets you switch between these two sets of blocks that leads to some interesting platforming challenges and puzzles. The slinky that can fall down steps and contributes to some of my favorite timing puzzles. Make sure you're in the right spot when the slinky gets to where it's going, essentially. And my personal favorite, the yo-yo. All you can do with it is throw it, but if you hold the button down, it continues to roll across the ground. It just looks very satisfying seeing it go round and around and around and around and around and around. Ugh. Depending on the order you can get these tools, some puzzles can just be abused. If you get the yo-yo as early as possible, then say goodbye to the challenge for certain puzzles, where you are obviously not supposed to have it. The fact that you can do that, however, is great. If you watch my 2023 games video, which you should definitely go do, then you know that part of the reason I felt Tears of the Kingdom was a bit of a letdown was the fact that with how open-ended the puzzles were, it felt like everything was intentional, and in turn, it set the feeling of thinking outside the box. This game gave me that feeling with how its puzzles are designed, and if I'm comparing your puzzles to one made by Nintendo in a positive light, I'd say that's pretty high praise. Some of them I definitely did not finish in the correct way. I'll take the final puzzle in the ostrich area, for example. In each area, to get the flame, you normally have to do a boss fight. I say that loosely because this game doesn't really have any combat in the traditional sense. Anyways, here you're supposed to push these 3 buttons to release this ostrich, running in this big hamster wheel. It chases you to the end of this corridor, where you drop it into this hole, hitting these 4 buttons, and opening the door to the flame. Very cool, climactic way to end this area. But if you want to do it the cool way, put the slinky on the button opening the floor, blow a bubble close to the wall, write it down until you press the top button, then throw the yo-yo quickly to hit the buttons on the right before swinging back to hit the button below, and bada bing, you've successfully done this puzzle without having to mess with the ostrich. I genuinely thought that this was how you were supposed to do it, until after I dropped the ostrich in the hole after the fact. That's when I realized, oh, that's what you were supposed to do. The way I did it did feel a bit underwhelming for sure, so I guess I wasn't surprised that I did it the quote-unquote wrong way. It's this sort of out-of-the-box thinking that this game is filled with. Most of the puzzles consist of pressing these yellow buttons to open a door, which on paper sounds boring. What, just pressing buttons? How passé. It's all the elements that are piled on top of this simple concept that makes these puzzles joyous to solve. Maybe you have to use your animal buddies to help hit buttons for you, or maybe you have to use all your tools accordingly to pass a difficult challenge. The final area is home to the best puzzles in my opinion, and I like how the final boss is a speedrun test of everything you've learned throughout the game, with this terrifying monster following you the entire time. Stay the fuck away from me. As you can tell, it was pretty intense. I enjoyed all the boss fights to a certain extent. The chameleon, the first one I found, was honestly kind of boring once you figure out the trick. The ostrich I already told you about. The seahorse, I was glad that these water bouncing puzzles got a proper conclusion. And then finally, the wolf spirit. In case you couldn't tell by now, I think this is the worst part of the game. I like the concept. You have to take this disc from this wolf head all the way to this other wolf statue, all while being chased by this infernal thing. It is supposed to be a showing of your knowledge of the map, finding the quickest, safest route that gives you enough wiggle room to avoid the spirit if it tries to swoop in. I think I found the quickest way there, but it was by no means safe. It requires you to do a lot of multitasking between switching between tools, dodging not just the spirit, but also the dogs you run in throughout, and some precise platforming. It was not a fun time. At the very least, they were kind enough not to make the whole body a hitbox, just the head, but it didn't necessarily make it much better. I was very happy once this was finally over, and that's not a compliment. That leads into my biggest complaint, and really my only one, now that I think about it. The whole world is too cramped for my liking. What I mean is that they really pack a lot of stuff in here, which sounds great. Sooner or later, you will find a map that gives you a layout of the rooms you visited, and it's great for seeing what rooms look like and where you are. You even get a pencil that lets you draw whatever you want on it, once you get enough eggs. Shit, I haven't even talked about the eggs yet. As you can guess, there are tons of secrets to be found, and the majority of them are these eggs that have some funky designs on them. Once you get enough of them, you will unlock many things, including fast travel, which comes in super handy. You can also get this flute, which lets you interact with some animals in some interesting ways, I assure you. I only found one room, where you can cause some turtles to come out of this water, if you play it. Sadly, I wasn't able to find all of them as I'm writing this. I only found 40 of them by the end of the game. Hopefully I can find the rest eventually. There are many other secrets that I haven't even discovered yet, like what's behind this door, lit by candles. Too many secrets, too little time. Anyways, what was I talking about again? Something about world design being cramped? Oh yeah, it just leads to a lot of rooms not being useful once you've done the one thing in them. So I often ended up going to a room I didn't need to because I was just looking for where I needed to go, which is more of a me problem, but I digress. If you want to really nitpick, some of these puzzles require some enemy AI to do what you want, and sometimes it just doesn't, like this otter puzzle where you have to lead them to the opposite side of the room so you can drop the slinky to hit some buttons, and if they're not all the way to the right, then you're just not going to be able to do this puzzle. What else? The soundtrack was sort of a low point for me. It was very atmospheric, which is fine when wandering around, but none of it really stuck with me, other than the sound that plays when you complete a task or a puzzle. I enjoy that wolf. And that's really all I have to say about Animal Well. This is an all-timer that you don't want to miss out on. It's not just a silly animal game published by a YouTuber that's love it or hate him. You shouldn't come into this with preconceived notions because you don't like the opinions of said YouTuber. Don't make a bad decision. If you come into this expecting the standard fare of Metroidvania, you'll most likely come out of this with a feeling of being let down. The big thing is that if you come in with an open mindset for the puzzles and the wanting to drown in its thick atmosphere, then I think you'll see exactly what I see in it too. Thank you for watching, and to sum up this entire video, it's a masterpiece.